Hello and welcome to Q Sports. I am Mumudu Gajaga. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, GFF election exclusive. The stakeholders have re-elected Lamin Kabir Bajo for another 4 years. He's going to be the Gambia Football Federation president. As continuity, well, Sadibou Kamaso, his closest challenger, couldn't make it to the top job. And we will look at some of the reactions pre-election. That is, just before the voting start, there was an extraordinary AGM in which Sadibou Kamaso was refused entry. We will put that also into perspective. We will hear from Sadibou Kamaso himself, and we will be talking about some of the pre-election alleged irregularities according to Sadibou Kamaso. We'll also look at the speech of Lamin Kabir Bajo, that is the victory speech immediately after he was announced as the winner of the GFF presidential election in August 2022. All that on tonight's Q Sports. Welcome and thank you if you're just joining us. This is Q Sports and I'm Mumudu Gajaga. We are looking at the Gambia Football Federation election, which was held on the 27th of August on Saturday at the Paradise Suites Hotel. And at that election, before the election starts, there were some issues, especially the refusal of entry of one of the presidential aspirants at the time, that is Sadibou Kamaso, into the election hall. Basically, it was an extraordinary General Assembly where the constitution was going to be amended. He was refused entry. But later on, during the election, he went in there with his team and the delegates and some of the people who were surrounded in his camp to vie for executive positions. That is the first vice president, the second vice president, third vice president, and executive committee members as well. So we'll bring you all those details. First, in this report, we will look at the election into perspective.
We want to do the voter roll call to be sure that every person that we have on our list is here present. And if he's not present, we know that he's not present. And then we know that that would be out of the list of the votes if he's not here, because there is no proxy voting. So in a sense, we're going to do that one to be sure we get all the 77 registered delegates to be voting who have the voting right.
According to the Constitution, each member should have voting right and the voting should be secret. But what I understand from you is all the three of the associations move together. All the four associations move together. That's not living now.
We have 46 members to GFF as registered. You are not a member of GFF. You may be a member of your club, but or association, whatever. But the member is the one that is registered with GFF. And that's what we are talking about. The balloting, voting is secret. Whatever you vote is up to you, and everybody is going to vote to get the 77. We've done the roll call on the delegates, and we confirmed that 77 is here. Not is going to get, not is going to be missing, not is going to be above 77 or below 77. So this we don't have problem, and everything is secrecy. We are calling the member because it's the member that is registered, and by the Constitution, that's what we're going to go by. We are calling you. Hey, listen. Don't make confusion here. We are calling the members as per the Constitution, the way the electoral code differs. Please. Now listen.
Clearly states that member, yes. But if there's a part it says he or she, there's no part it says they.
That's what I'm saying. Once you confirm that it's a member, it's the member we are calling. Once we give you your vote, you know where to vote. Yes.
It says he or she.
Yes.
He didn't say they.
That's why we said, because he or she should have the right to vote anywhere he wants to vote. But the member, but it doesn't say an individual delegate, it's a member. So we're giving the votes to the member. As chairman of the Gambia Football Federation Elective Committee, hereby declared Mr. Lamin Kabir Bajo as president-elect for the 2022 GFF Elective Congress. Thank you.
Well, after the elections, the votes were announced. It was Lamin Kababajo who got the top job, of course, with 51 votes and Sadibou Kamaso 25 votes. There was one invalid vote, and we will also bring you the details of how the election went. First, let's get the reaction of the winner of the GFF presidential election, Lamin Kababajo.
You have expressed your will as you decided. And I also want to thank the Electoral Committee for going by the books and for being very professional in the way they handle this process. I want to also thank our opponents in this election for being able to pursue the process in a mature and a professional way, which gave us a very peaceful election. Because outside, before today, everybody are jittery, not only the stakeholders, but the whole population were on the edge. Everybody is concerned about the outcome of this election. And unfortunately, this was further fueled and peddled by some unfortunate statements that were broadcast on the media. But Alhamdulillah, we argued, we debated, we defended our positions, but at the end of the day, we allowed those responsible to conduct the elections, hence the peaceful nature of this election. Once again, I want to thank them for that, because it could have been otherwise. Those who voted for me and my team members, despite the fact that you are in the majority and you had every cause to do otherwise, but you are taking heed of the advice that we gave each other last night. I thank you, and I'm indebted to you for heeding to what you said.
And now let's talk about Sadibou Kamaso. He put up a brave fight, despite all the odds and so many critics. He went in there and contested. He didn't win, but he said he's still going to be in football because he's a passionate football fan. We had an exclusive discussion with him immediately after the vote. Also, there were lots of journalists asking lots of questions. He waited and reacted to some of the questions. Let's hear from Sadibou Kamaso.
As they say, secret ballot. You can never know who's voting for you. I have met each and every stakeholder. We've crisscrossed this country. I've met each and every stakeholder, and what we do is to ask them for their vote and present what we have. And a good number gave us their award. That was why we were confident. They gave us their award because that's the only thing you can do. You can't rely on, because people say you did a good social media campaign. You'll be amazed to know that I'm not on Facebook. I've never been. But I have a media team who control that. I have a media team who manage that. I was doing more of the face-to-face, more of the one-to-ones. And I've met every stakeholder. So, the ones that we believe are on our side. But if some of these stakeholders come today and decide to do the otherwise, I think they're happy with the status quo. So we'll take that. But as I said, we know there were some inducements. There were some coercions. Last night, these stakeholders were all taken to a hotel. They were giving dinner. They were told to vote this. They were told to vote the constitutional amendment. Which hotel? Metzi Hotel. At Metzi Hotel, the stakeholders were there. They were told to vote in the constitution. They were told to even come and sit together. Normally, the electoral committee should have had seating arrangements wherever you go, CAF or every Congress. But they did this so that they can monitor what these people are doing. So they do not leave them in, because when they were coming, most of the RFAs were going to do a block voting. And now that things have gone this way, that's what the stakeholders wanted. The voting process, I must admit, was fair because it was transparent. But what happened before the voting process is what we are questioning. But as you said, we spoke to the stakeholders, we met them, we sold our agenda to the best of our ability, and most of them what the ideas that we had. So if they change today, because we have seen the executive split in clubs, so if they change today and go the other way, you know, we accept that that's what the stakeholders have said, but we would sit as a team, look at the next option as to the irregularities and the malpractice that have transpired before the election program. One thing I even forgot to highlight is we've seen so many observers who are all associated with Team Kaba. They all have tags. All those people who call themselves observers are all Team Kaba. They are all supporters of him. As you can see, if they can bar me as a president from coming in, we don't even have any observers. Our people were stopped at the junction. Pa Aliou Cisse, who's a member of my executive, was ruffled up by a PIU officer there at the gate. Yes, Usainu Dabo was ruffled up. He was thrown out. So we've seen that, and yet this team has over 10 people who are serving as observers. They're paying attention to what these people do, looking at their body language. But as you said, the whole country wanted us to come in. But the stakeholders, who are 77, want this team to serve, and they've done that. They've spoken. Whatever we enjoy through this period, we can all enjoy that because we are all in this game, and it is only honorable for people to come out when the need arises for you to make a change. That's what we had offered, because the excruciating pain we have suffered in our football from 2014 to date has been manifestly evident. So if stakeholders decide to go otherwise, when they look at you in the eye to tell you you have our vote and decide otherwise, we can only respect their decision. And I respect their decision that the stakeholders have done that. But that doesn't mean we're not going to challenge the irregularities that have transpired today. Because FIFA and CAF were here today, but they just kept quiet. The National Sports Council were here today, but they kept quiet because they saw what happened at the gate today. How my people were being thrown out, how I was being pushed out. Because when I was filing in my nomination paper, I was General Secretary of Hawks, up to the 28th. And even on that 28th day of July, I signed a check on behalf of Hawks. On the 29th day, I saw a newspaper publication from the Standard newspaper saying that Hawks had withdrawn my signature using a letter that was dated 10th July. I still haven't seen the letter, but that's what was captured on the Standard newspaper. I was able to confirm this by the simple fact that the nominations for all the candidates was out and published by the Electoral Committee. And every nomination paper is supposed to be signed by the President and the General Secretary. I, as a General Secretary of Hawks, did not sign that. So Hawks had indeed withdrawn my signature. That said, I went ahead and joined Young Africans because they are the ones who nominated me. It was only natural because I'm in football. And the transfer of a particular official from one club to another doesn't have a window for a particular time. Now, if we file in our list of delegates and the Electoral Committee tells me the timing of that is questionable, because from the 28th of July to the 27th of August, people could change clubs like 3-4 times. So if you're telling me that it's questionable, you have indeed shown that you're siding with the other side. But again, I said the voting process was fair, but what happened before the voting is what we're questioning.
And now, what is going to be next for the Gambia Football Federation, especially Lamin Kaba Bajo, who has been elected into office, with his executive committee members, the first vice president, the second vice president, the third vice president, and executive committee members. Because you would recall in the election, all the other positions still went to Team Kaba, because Sadibou Kamaso's team, who were vying for the first vice presidency, the second vice presidency, and the third vice presidency, all withdrew their candidature because they knew, obviously, the voting trend is going to continue the same, so they don't want to waste much of the time. They would come to the electoral hall and give an announcement through the microphone to say, I am withdrawing my candidature, and the proceedings will continue to the next level as well. So what is going to be next for the new Gambia Football Federation, that is the executive, plus the president himself, Lamin Kaba Bajo? He also talked about what's going to be his plans for the next 4 years.
We believe and cherish continuity. Continuity brings stability, and instability we can progress. It's because of that stability, it's because of the stability that we are able to bring into the football, in this football fraternity in this country, hence the results we are all jubilating. The past executive committee, which is being re-elected in another form, has achieved a lot in football development. A colleague will say in all aspects of football development. Yes, we had several challenges in terms of implementing the infrastructural projects that we embarked on several years ago. This has caused so many impediments to football, or the playing of football in those pitches. And equally important, if not most important, is women's football. I will not stop talking about this. And I want to thank you all for voting massively in approving this very important milestone amendment of our Constitution. I'm a very proud person today. At least in 4 years' time when I hand over. And in fact, I'm looking forward before the end of this current term to increase yet again the number of female representatives in the executive. It's still very small. You cannot count 5 in 20. But from 2 to 5, that is a big achievement. I thank my colleagues for agreeing to my proposal and also to you for voting for this milestone achievement. And I also want to happily announce that in addition to our request from FIFA for the infrastructural developments, we also attempted and succeeded in securing some support from some of our bilateral partners in terms of our sister football federations. We have submitted to the Saudi Arabia Football Federation a request of support to build a mini stadium in the URR, precisely in Nyakoi. And I'm happy to announce that we have obtained approval from the Saudi Football Federation to support us in that endeavor to the tune of $200,000 US, which is almost 50% of the total. And I can also happily announce that similar approach was made to the Royal Football Federation of Morocco, and they have also happily granted approval to support us in implementing a similar project in Bansang in the CRR. I think this will reduce the pressure on the FIFA project funds. And because all these projects are already part of our the project that we want to implement, and we will not relent in our efforts to diversify our sources of funds or incomes by making the best of the bilateral relationships that we are able to establish with some of our colleagues. And now on this note, before we part, as a requirement, I want to call on my colleagues who are in the other camp, Team Kamaso or Team Restore Confidence, that I believe, we believe, that we all have the same objective of developing football in this country. They are not saying, all they want, I expect is that they think they could do it better than us. That's why they vie for the offices. But the stakeholders have spoken, and I'm extending an olive branch to them so that we reconcile our differences if there are any. But I can assure you, for me as Kaba, I don't have any beef with anybody. I think also that. And I have nobody in my colleagues who will have it. Let's reconcile our differences and come back in the name of unity so that we can continue the development of football in this country until the next 4 years. I thank you.
Well, that's it. Exclusive Gambia Football Federation election. It was. Thank you very much for watching. Join us next week for more sports and have a pleasant evening. Bye.